Hi, everyone. My name is Joseph Silvia. I'm the CEO at Medware Cyber. We specialize in the cybersecurity space for medical device manufacturers, hospitals, and HDOs. I'm here with Ken Zalevsky from Vigilant Ops, and we're going to be discussing SBOMs. Ken, thanks so much for joining and participating in this interview. I know this is something that's extremely important to you and something that we discussed extensively in the past. The conversation around supply chain management with software and the importance of SBOMs is crucial. So let's jump right into it and why SBOMs is so important, particularly in the medical device and healthcare sectors. What do you see as the key reasons for its importance in these areas?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And first, I want to thank you for taking time to talk with me today, and it's great to be here. So, yeah, in the medical sector specifically, patient safety drives everything, right? I mean, our mission at Vigilant is really around patient safety. At the end of the day, the more secure the devices, the more more we can keep the patient safe. So that's kind of first and foremost. I mean, we have this big compliance hammer, I call it, from FDA and requirements around SBOMs. So that's driving a lot of the activity there. And then I think just in general, hospitals are kind of wanting to share that risk, right? They don't know where the vulnerabilities are in the systems they're deploying. They want to see those vulnerabilities. SBOMs are the best way to get them. And so the consumers are also driving that demand. So I think all three of those things are really pushing SBOMs, especially in healthcare.
Yeah. Vulnerability management, regulatory compliance, and then like you said, supply chain risk management, right? Yeah, and that's kind of
Exactly.
how I always understood it. And it's great to get your perspective on that. And I
Yeah.
think and I think the other thing is I wanted to ask you is, what the current I'd say the current landscape when you look at SBOMs and, you know, I think there's been a lot of discussion around VEX and, CVEs and all and how vulnerabilities are managed and some of the information that gets missed, right? With these transitive dependencies in software, right? As you know, they're coming from all over the place, whether it's firmware, something from hardware, other different types of software, free open source software. It's a big challenge. So, can you explain how the current SBOMs are likely missing vulnerabilities and how you see that piece of it?
Yeah, of course, and that's a great question. And you're right on the money with respect to SBOMs really not having the information needed to really track all the vulnerabilities, right? I mean, you want to get to the best level of detail you can with respect to vulnerabilities, so that you can track and mitigate those, right? And so if any information is missing out of there, you're going to be missing vulnerabilities. And so what we say is really that build SBOM, or the SBOM that you build on in the CI/CD pipeline, is giving you that view in the source code, which is giving you packages and libraries and things that are being built in source code. But then you have the flip side view of that, which is the deployed system or the deployed device. So if you think about medical devices, they get built and deployed on a piece, usually a piece of hardware, but they can run as software, it doesn't matter. But they get built and deployed in a hospital. And that profile of that system that's deployed differs from the profile of the system that was built in a lot of ways. There are runtime packages and libraries that don't get installed until it's deployed and then built. So that final version has some more stuff on it than you would get from the build environment. So if you don't have both of those together, you're going to miss vulnerabilities. And that's where we say medical device manufacturers today are not, I think a lot of them aren't aware of that. They're mostly focused on the engineering side, on the CI/CD pipeline, on the build and getting packages and libraries taken care of, which is great. That's step one. But now you got to think about you've got a deployed device out there, and you're really sitting out there with a lot of risk if you're not tracking vulnerabilities in that end product, right? And so that's where we say you're missing a lot of vulnerabilities. And Vigilant Ops has taken that on as a challenge. We have built what we call our deployed device generator, which allows this combination of what's actually running out there and what you actually built. So now you're not missing anything with respect to the Vigilant platform.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because, I always think about it when you look at software from, maybe the clinical side of it, and then all of a sudden it becomes commercial, right? And how different they
Right.
look from one perspective to the other, right? Or one, like you said, one build to the next, right? When you're trying
You
to track
got
these vulnerabilities, just looks so different, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And it happens, throughout. I mean, everybody's got their own CI/CD pipeline, their own build processes. They're all somewhat different, but at the end of the day, they all go through kind of the same steps to get that final product deployed. And then everybody, in my mind, everybody should be questioning, now what, right? I've got this, I've gone through this build process, I'm generating SBOMs, and I'm checking the box with security, with respect to security, but now I'm putting this out in the field, and I've got a different profile, and I'm deploying it in a hospital, and things are different. And so you really got to track that as well.
Yeah, great. And I know, just segues perfectly into, the next question, right? You were talking about, let's, kind of address the elephant in the room, if you will, right? Which is risk, right? And I
Yeah.
think with risk, right, the medical manufacturers, what do they need to know about risk and understanding the gaps in risk? I mean, this is something that I see all the time as a consultant, but you working with SBOMs all the time. What do you see as some of the major challenges with risk, from a gap perspective, that the medical manufacturers have to take an account for?
And that's a great point. And like you said, you see it all the time out there. I see it all the time. We have this idea that goes all the way back to FDA with shared risk. So FDA has always been saying, device manufacturers should share the risk with the hospitals and vice versa. So as the device is deployed in an environment and within a hospital, for example, we should share that risk when it's on the network. But I think a lot of the blindsidedness, if you will, for a device manufacturer comes once that device is deployed. I mean, they have a really hard time keeping up with continuous vulnerability monitoring. Vulnerabilities coming out continuously, as we know, right? Understanding where those vulnerabilities are hitting within their deployed systems is a really big gap. So I think there's a lot of knowledge that has to be kind of put around this space of I've deployed a device. I have an SBOM that I created when I'm in the build side. Now, what do I do with it, and how do I track risk as it goes forward? And then I'm not even going to talk about the legacy problem, right? When you've got devices that are 25 years old that
Yeah.
are out there, right? That have run past their life cycle by 3 times, right? They've been out of date for many years, running much needed updates to software that have been have been vulnerable for many years. So the idea again is what do I do about that as a device manufacturer? How do I even know that's there? How do I track that? And again, that's that whole gap that we're looking at assessing with that deployed device. So it's a
Yeah,
great
I know.
question, and yeah,
Yeah, no, thanks, Ken. I like the fact that you touched upon the legacy software because that's kind of the one that, you hear quite a bit, right? Are we gonna use network segmentation to like isolate the software? What are we gonna do, right? How are we gonna
right,
manage the mitigate those risks? So
right.
I mean, I think the other follow-up, Ted, is like, when you're mitigating, I guess, software supply chain, right? The risks that are involved in that too, right? That's the big that's the big component too, right? When you look at the
Yeah.
software supply chain and securing that, right? And how the SBOM handles that as well, right?
For sure. I mean, yeah, supply chain is what I picture in an ideal world. So the way the supply chain should work with SBOM kind of facilitating things is, producers of technology should be communicating with consumers of technology using the SBOM as that transparent mechanism. So we should all understand the amount of risk we're taking as we're building stuff into our products that we're creating up and down the supply chain. So at the end of the day, that transparency mechanism that's provided by the SBOM really facilitates that secure supply chain. We know as consumers of technology and producers of technology, the risk profile at any given time of products up and down the supply chain. And we don't know that today. And that is a big gap, right? And so you look at supply chain security suffers directly from that, not understanding those vulnerabilities as things move up and down the supply chain. And so that's a big area. And I feel like SBOM covers a lot of that. Now, it's not a silver bullet. It doesn't protect everything, but it gives that transparency and allows consumers and producers of technology to have that extra knowledge that they don't have today.
Yeah, so I think, the way you were putting that too, and I like the way you phrased that. I think it goes beyond software transparency when you talk about I think a lot of people, in other words, they lump both those together, right? Software transparency and SBOM. But it's more than that, right? It's more
It's
than
more
that.
than that.
Yeah,
Yes, totally agree. Yeah, no, you're right on the money. Yep, it's much more than that.
yeah. Great. So thanks, Ken. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Um,
Joe. I really enjoyed talking to you as always. Very knowledgeable consultant in the field, and look forward to many more good conversations.